So I got a new haircut. I'm growing the beard. God's in his heaven. Everything's right with the world. Wait a minute. Someone's wrong on the internet. So for the sake of my sanity, I'm going to call him Stuart. Stuart Pidd. Yeah, Stuart Pidd. You'll see why.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about satellites. Now, people claim that they've seen satellites at night, and I mean, I've seen things that moving across the sky at night. Also, there's been points where I'd be looking up and I would see a light of some sort going across the sky. Yes, sure. But as far as being able to confirm whether or not that's actually a satellite, as we've been shown by the spacefaring agencies, NASA in particular, we can't make that determination just by looking up and seeing a light.
And it's true, you can't make that determination just by looking at the sky and seeing a light crossing above it, but you can download an app for your smartphone or programs for your computers, or you can go online to inthesky.org and see where satellites are going to be at any given time and see one pass over your head.
In addition to that, NASA's been caught faking so many times that I really don't trust anything that they have to say anyway. So if you do a quick Google search, you'll see satellites from NASA, and I mean, you'll see a lot of cartoons, CGI imagery, artist depictions. Then you got to ask yourself how exactly these pictures of satellites are being taken, as if each satellite out in space have its own satellite that follows it along to take selfies or something.
You're right, satellites can't take selfies. So,
Artist depictions. Also, there's video of what seem to be satellites being launched from Antarctica attached to weather balloons.
brilliant, Stu. You couldn't even be bothered to look into it, could ya? Well, that's okay, because I did it for you. Guess what? Those satellites that you're playing that jaunty tune to are called STOs, Stratospheric Terahertz Observatories. What are those, you ask? And even if you don't, I'm going to tell you. They are stratospheric terahertz observatories. They are designed to help astronomers better understand how materials begin to coalesce to form cold, dark molecular clouds. They're stratospheric telescopes, more or less. So why did I bring this all up? Oh, the point is, they do not ever, never leave Earth's atmosphere. They never, ever pretended to be anything other than stratospheric telescopes. Period. They are not satellites.
Then, of course, the last couple years there's been multiple videos surfacing of satellites, in quotes, crashing in South America.
Satellites crashing in South America in the last few years, Stu. Really? Do you realize it only took me a couple minutes to figure out what you were talking about? A real quick Google search, and it got me loon balloons. Yeah. And they are put in the atmosphere by helium weather balloons to bring 4G LTE to remote areas. This first picture is of a loon balloon that crashed near Los Angeles, California. I have no idea when they moved that to South America. This one's from Sri Lanka. That's near India. You do believe in India, don't you? Up next is from Chile, April 2016. This one is from Bocas del Toro, Panama. And this last one is from Brazil. So as you can see, of the 5 loon balloon pictures I've found, 2 of them were from South America. The others, Central America, North America, Asia, not all South America. You took one video of one balloon crash and assumed all of them crashed in South America. Pathetic.
Then we have to take into consideration from all the data that we're given, these images that were given officially of how many satellites are actually supposed to be up there orbiting the Earth. Now, the thing about these satellites is that we're told that these satellites from these vast distances out in space are constantly beaming these crystal clear high-def images back to the Earth from millions of miles away. Although I find it odd that we tend to drop calls in between cities, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose.
And there are many reasons why you would have a dropped call. Signal strength, low battery, too far away from a transmission tower. If satellites are causing you to drop calls, you don't have a cell phone, you have a satellite phone.
Now, let's take a look at some of these images and give them a critical analysis. In particular, let's look at the pictures of Earth from space. Now, you'll notice that the pictures of Earth from these satellites are always sent back as, oriented as we've been taught to view the Earth. There's always the northern hemisphere is at the top and the southern hemisphere is at the bottom. We always see pictures of Earth oriented this way when they're presented to us as actual pictures of the Earth, which I find odd.
When a picture from a satellite is transmitted to Earth, someone smarter than you picks it up, looks at the picture, and turns it so that north is up, the preferred direction. And then they put it on the internet to baffle you, Stu.
Because, well, here, let me get to this. One of my favorite go-tos when I speak about flat Earth is that bodies of water don't curve, that water seeks to find its level, that the surface of water is always generally flat. And the response that follows from the heliocentric enthusiast is typically in reference to gravity, or when I talk about water sticking to the bottom of a spinning ball, they'll talk about relativity, basically how the Earth is out in space and there's no up or down in space, things like that.
No. They'll talk about gravity specifically. In space, it doesn't matter up, down, left, right, back, forward. It does not matter at all. On Earth, up is always away from the center of mass. Or, to put it in a way you can understand, up is the sky. So if you're on a globe, up is this way, not this way. And when you're talking about water covering a spinning spheroid that's 40,000 kilometers around, it's all about gravity, baby.
Now, again, being that there's no up or down in space, one would have to wonder exactly how every single time these pictures of the Earth are given to us, how they're always oriented north at the top, south at the bottom. Some way or another, these satellites would have to be focused out in space and oriented properly each time to get these pictures to show up that way. This would mean that the vast majority of the time that pictures of the Earth that are being sent from whatever satellite being beamed back to the Earth from millions of miles away is always the preferable angle of the Earth that we have been taught in the educational system, and nobody seems to question that.
When a picture from a satellite is transmitted to Earth, someone smarter than you picks it up, looks at the picture, and turns it So that north is up, the preferred direction. And then they put it on the internet to baffle you, Stu.
Now, one video that I've been delving into, taking a really close look at, is the one from NASA's website where they show that the moon is transiting across the face of the Earth. And that was from the Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera. This was back in 2015 when that happened. So, that 20-second video, let's think about this. What NASA's telling us is that 20-second video took place July 16th, 2015. Over the course of that time span, basically, that time lapse was pictures taken over the course of almost 5 hours. And what they did, they spliced those pictures together and create that 20-second video that's being shown right now. Let's think about the epic for a second. That camera that was taking those pictures of Earth for that amount of time, all right, was said to be 1 million miles away. So it's this camera out in space, zoomed in from 1 million miles away. And they're saying it's been locked in for almost 5 hours, okay? 4 hours and 55 minutes, while the Earth is still orbiting around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour. That means that this 20-second clip of those pictures being spliced together means that the Epic was able to track the Earth as it moved 329,372 miles through space. And it was able to take those pictures in such a spectacular order and splice them all together as if the Earth were in a fixed position.
Of the 4,987 satellites in orbit, only 5 are 1 million or more miles away. So if you're going to pull numbers out of your ass, at least tone it down by a factor of about, 4,000, because you're talking hundreds of miles or thousands of miles, not millions of miles. And they don't all take pictures.
What I did, I went in a little closer and I pulled up the schematic for the Epic. And on the schematic, it shows a lot of components that are used to capture images. Okay, lots of that going on. But as far as propulsion and moving that camera around, moving that satellite to get those pictures perfectly locked in, there's only one means of propulsion, and that's at the bottom. Okay, the propulsion module at the bottom. Now, if we're out in space and there's no base, there's no foundation, there's no up, down, there's no left or right, there's no direction out in space because it's all relative, right? So there would have to be an exceptionally complex navigational system in order to keep that camera locked in on the Earth at that distance for that amount of time. If you can find the schematic, if you can find someone that can properly explain how a camera from 1 million miles away was able to zoom in on the Earth, lock in while the Earth travels through space, and is able to take pictures, these crystal clear high def images, and beam them back real time, create this beautiful time lapse of the moon transiting in front of the Earth with only one means of propulsion and navigating this satellite. You let me know. I'm calling BS on the whole thing, personally.
So, Stu, I'm officially letting you know. Earth is traveling at 67,000 miles per hour. That is true. But by extension, so is everything on the Earth. And when an object leaves the Earth, it's still keeping that momentum. It doesn't lose its speed relative to Earth. So, when it gets in orbit, there's no air. No air resistance, nothing to slow it down. It travels for 100 days. It gets into its orbit, locks itself in, not with the real locks do. You should be ashamed of yourself. And it stays there and makes minor attitude adjustments as it needs to from one of its 10, not one, 10 thrusters. You looked at a drawing of the satellite and said it's only got one thruster. I looked at the specs. There's 10 of them. And this is what happens when you look at a drawing and trust your own senses. You ain't got any.
Now let's look at another aspect of this whole situation. The analogy I like to use in comparison to when items leave the Earth. What I've been thinking about now is, think of a person driving a car down the freeway at 60 miles per hour. Okay, if there's a fly buzzing around inside that car, the driver gets annoyed, rolls the window down. The fly gets sucked out of the window of the car. Suddenly, the fly is independent of the car. The car continues moving. The fly's out, buzzing over the freeway, back in the rear view. All right. So you got to ask yourself, is it possible that the fly can ever actually catch up to the car? Absolutely not. That's a physical impossibility. The fly cannot flap its wings fast enough to ever catch up with that car. Period. Point blank.
So you say the Epic is moving independent of the Earth and it's not on any kind of stand or anything, so it can't possibly keep up, but it's already going at that speed when it's launched, so what's the problem? There isn't one, but you'll invent one anyways.
The propulsion system would not be sufficient to keep up with the Earth over the course of that period of time for that distance. There's absolutely no way. 1,912,080,000 miles is the amount of space through which the Earth had moved between February 11th and July 16th. And on July 16th, NASA says that the Epic was taking those pictures from that fixed position only 1 million miles away. And yet, over the course of that 4 hours and 45 minutes, the Earth had moved 318,250 miles through space.
So, Stu, Mr. Pitt, I already explained it to you. That satellite didn't get left behind like that poor fly you chucked out the window did, because there's no wind shear, because there's no wind. It doesn't have to keep up, it's already up. Discover, the satellite that the Epic sits on, is happy to just cruise along with the Earth doing minor attitude adjustments, because much like your head, space is empty. But unlike your head, there are no echoes. The noise in there must be deafening.
And they believe it. I'm not buying it.
And you don't have to buy it. Nobody's selling it. But even though you aren't buying it, you sure can shovel it. So remember, kids, stay in school, stay away from drugs, and don't be stupid.